Welcome to Planetary Spirit, coming to you on ETIN, Emerson Talk and Information Network. My name is Jeff Ferrannini, and I invite you on an exploration of spirituality. And my guest today is Bill Pfeiffer, who is a maverick deep ecologist, a spiritual coach, a shamanic guide, as well as an author. He's also known as Sky Otter and the founder of Sacred Earth Network, which has implemented leading-edge visions for almost 20 years. Now, in that time, Bill made Russia a second home, having traveled there 42 times, giving him a rare cross-cultural perspective. He has 25 years of experience in re-evaluation counseling and Vipassana meditation. He has undergone extensive training with Siberian shamans, as well as with Joanna Macy and John Perkins. He has spent much time in the U.S. Southwest learning about native medicine ways and the crucial importance of the petroglyphs and pictographs. Bill brings to all his work a dynamic mixture of open-heartedness, sensitivity, and a fierce determination for a peaceful, sustainable future. His book is entitled Wild Earth, Wild Soul, a Manual for an Ecstatic Culture. And his website is www.billpfeiffer.org. That's BILLPFEIFFER.org. So it is indeed a pleasure to welcome today to Planetary Spirit, Bill Pfeiffer. Hey, Bill, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Jeff. How about yourself?
I'm doing real good also, and it's wonderful to have you here on the program.
Thanks. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So I thought we would start this off. Now, I'm getting a little bit of an echo. I don't know if you can hear that or not. Okay. No. Yeah. A little bit of an echo. Can you hear that?
How's that? Is that better?
Well, we'll see as we go along. Maybe it is a little better. So I thought we would start off with, I'm still getting that echo, with a poem of mine entitled Closer. Closing my eyes, drifting deeper down, sliding further down, inside my being, down the energy column, within the electric body, my consciousness glides down, gently coming to rest in my belly, my beautiful belly, light-filled and radiant, brimming with vibration, both hands overlapped on my belly. Swirling sweeps of joy wash over me. I hover in the silence, feeling deep down inside me insatiable longings for more light, flooding me from eons ago when angels were present to guide me, fiercely magnificent and ordinary. Yes, and trees would talk to me freely. Rivers would lap at their banks with laughter. I remember how I would feel delirious, seeing fairies dancing in the silver moonlight, forming circles among toadstools there at my feet. I remember how I would shiver with childlike wonder. Was it all just a dream? was it only a dream?
Wow. It's a beautiful poem, Jeff. Really beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. So I thought we would begin this with, I wanted to read something from the beginning part of your book, Wild Earth, Wild Soul. There's just a few passages I want to just touch on.
Sure.
Where you say, a culture made up of wild souls certainly encourages the intellectual abilities of each individual and provides mentoring by the more experienced to the less. But more importantly, it relies on the larger intelligence that is already within each of us, that includes, but is deeper than thought, to guide the way. And then you continue by saying, the premise is that this place of wholeness, connectedness, and gratitude is where wise actions, healthy life ways, and sustainable cultures grow. It is the wisdom of the earth herself flowing through each of us that can provide the clearest direction for the way ahead. It is about each of us trusting our deepest experience by being open and receptive to that flow. So I'm just wondering, this book, Wild Earth, Wild Soul, subtitled A Manual for an Ecstatic Culture, is about these 10-day Wild Earth intensives that you offer in Massachusetts, I believe, at Earthlands. And it's all about going back to looking at or rethinking or re-being more in the energy of connecting with something deeper than really encompasses our understanding. Where did this passion, because if there's one word I would have to use for this book, Wild Earth, Wild Soul, it is the word passion. It's quiet at times, it's more burning and more out front and flaming at times, but there's this quiet fire of passion that seems to run throughout this book. Where did that come from? And then where did the Wild Earth Intensive come from for you?
Great questions. I'm still reverberating in a good way from your poem.
Oh, thank you.
And when I heard the poem and really let it sink in, it reminds me of I think I can connect up the poem with your question, which is I think the passion comes from a deep sense in myself, having spent a lot of time both with Native peoples and with peoples who are regular folk whose intention is to remember the ways of the earth and the ways of the cosmos, and really get into the deeper feeling, the deeper spirituality of being alive. And in that process, what invariably happens is, both in myself and in many of the participants, is this sense of, there was this time a long time ago, and we don't ever really know what that means because time is somewhat insignificant in this, but just a sense of, I believe the word that you used was longing. Like in the remembering, we have this deep sense of, we know what it's like to live in a balanced, whole, way with the natural world, with one another, with spirit. And we also have an experience of not knowing that. So whenever we do have these periods of remembering, it also triggers this deep and sometimes I call it kind of an ancestral longing or an ancestral memory of what it was like to live in balance and to live in harmony with the earth and her creatures. And I think that anybody who reads the book, that it's an invitation for them to put some time aside to take part in that remembering. So I know your question was more personal, and that's the first way I'd like to answer it. And I guess the second part is just that there's a lot at stake, Jeff. I mean, I feel like ultimately all is well, but the amount of suffering for humanity and the other species is really in our hands. And so, I feel like each one of us is at choice in terms of how we spend our time. And this is one of lots of ways for people to make the choice to kind of do things a little bit differently or to experience life and themselves a little bit differently.
No, I guess what I was wondering is if at any point on your path you had some kind of, let's just say, something out of the normal 9 to 5 experience that called to you in a deeper way, that just said to you, you're needed. You're needed to bring all of who you are and to help people start to wake up.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, I've had probably a dozen very powerful experiences that have kept that passion alive. I speak about one of them in the introduction to the book, where I go on a vision quest, and that helps set the stage for writing the book. But when you asked the question, I was reminded that when I was a young man, I think I was 26, I was at a demonstration. Demonstration's a weak word. It was I don't know, a lot of people don't know about it. It was June 12th of 1982. It took place in Central Park. It took place at the second special session on disarmament and at the UN. And at that time, there was a tremendous amount of nuclear saber-rattling between the then Soviet Union and the United States. And having grown up as I guess it was a 2 or 3-year-old, 4-year-old during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I remember my parents turning ashen white. Actually, I think I was actually 6. It was 1962. That I for whatever reason, I developed a deep sensitivity for kind of this sense of we're all in this together, and there are monstrous threats to our well-being as a human species. And so when that demonstration happened, where 1 million people from all over the world descended on New York City, I had a spiritual awakening. I felt I wondered if I had taken a psychotropic substance, and I know that I hadn't, and I was experiencing an incredible amount of love for humanity and the possibility of us evolving in a good way. I'll never forget it. That was the kind of start off seminal experience of my adult life that put me on the path that I'm on today. The final thing I'll say about it is just that I wasn't taking that good care of myself beforehand and drinking too much, and it completely it was a message from, higher intelligence to take care of myself and realize that there's something much bigger and vaster going on and very beautiful and mysterious.
Well, let's go back to what you said earlier, which is that the book does allude to in the beginning of you being on a vision quest with I think maybe one other person. And I couldn't help but kind of smile as I read that. I think you were out on the land 3, maybe 4 days on a vision quest. This was, I think, somewhere out in the Southwest. I'm not sure. But,
in Utah, outside of Moab, Utah. Yeah.
And after you come back, all these expectations and everything, you really search your soul, and there's nothing that, stood out for you. No eagle came down to land on your hand. No snake started speaking. No bear crossed your path. And yet, what happened after that? Like the day after or as you came back, that was life-changing.
Yeah, so as I said, and this is what's so interesting, Jeff, and your question is kind of cool because I hadn't quite put it together, but that I told you about June 12th of 1982, this experience, the end of the 4-day vision quest was June 12th of 1998.
Oh, my heavens.
Yeah, and so the time out in the desert fasting was very, very powerful, but there was no message from on high, as you said. No eagle landed in my hand, but I felt incredible about it, and I guess maybe there was kind of some mild disappointment that I hadn't received any instructions, but I just, it was fine. I went to bed, whatever it was, 11 o'clock or something like that, and 2 hours later, boom! I'm awake from the most powerful dream that I've ever had, and have ever had. I just all of a sudden I just became flooded with information, and I started to write furiously. It was kind of like one of those things where people talk about automatic writing. I felt, it's a good word, kind of possessed by the Spirit. And what's interesting, kind of about just this interview right now, that I don't normally feel as passionately as I do at this moment, but in remembering that waking dream was this sense of what's the word for it? It's like one way to put it, I guess, would be that each one of us is crucially important and has so much to say and has so much power in terms of how things play themselves out on planet Earth, that we're not kind of this sort of helpless to the, slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, that we actually get to play in this meta game of remembering and awakening, and that, as you invited me before we started the call, to have fun. It's not, I may sound kind of serious, but what's paradoxical is that the more we see the kind of compelling nature of what's going on and how big the situation, and in some ways what a pickle we're in, it's almost like the only response is we have to laugh, connect, be joyful, dance, and sing out for this beautiful thing that we call life. Because if you think about it, we're not singing because we're afraid and we're in some sort of we're in some sort of a difficult place, psychologically and spiritually, or we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in.
Yeah, yeah. So what actually came out of that dream? What was the what did those writings then kind of motivate you or propel you to do?
Yeah, I'd say that there were three aspects of it, and one of them was to do a Native American, Native Siberian indigenous exchange, mostly amongst medicine people, of which, when I was director of Sacred Earth Network, we did 5 or 6 of those, and they were incredibly fascinating and deep and interesting. And for some reason, I'm spacing on the second one.
Yeah, I've got it here.
What was the second one?
Organize an ongoing exchange of spiritual and cultural knowledge between Native Americans and Native Siberians.
Right.
But what I'm hearing you saying is that really what that dream did was really put you on a new path and started to kind of bring in now these new connections to people all over the world, and has really culminated in what this Wild Earth Intensive, these 10-day intensive meetings that people are gathering and moving toward becoming, seeing the world in a new and different way, is really the culmination of that dream.
Yeah, that's well said, Jeff. I think that to put it very simply, we're all indigenous if we go back far enough, and some of the native peoples who are alive today who are living a traditional lifestyle, they can remind us of what we all know, that we're deeply connected to the earth, that we know how to live in balance, the things that I mentioned before, and that it's incredible to be alive in gratitude. And so remembering the ways of the earth and passing them on is what the Wild Earth Intensive, which you mentioned before as a kind of 10-day microcosm of earth-honoring culture is. I've been leading those for a while. I love them. And just to repeat, we all have this indigenous soul. It's not something that somebody in Siberia has or Australia. It's in every one of us. And when it starts to come out, all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, this is wonderful. And I chose 10 days because I felt like the weekend workshop just doesn't do enough. We then tend to go back to our sort of kind of habits and routines too easily, mm-hmm. and that 10 days is really a way to make a break, and so that all the things that you and I have been talking about that could be seen as very abstract and philosophical become very directly known, and we understand things that in our bodies that we wouldn't know any other way.
Yeah, let me read just a couple of passages from your book, Wild Earth, Wild Soul, and then we're going to go to a break. But you say, our task then is to remember and reclaim our indigenous souls and learn to truly live in balance with the land once again, yet in a new and creative way. In doing so, we will remember we are good to the core. In the same way, plants, animals, clouds, and stars are good to the core. This is not just a philosophical concept, but a felt experience of the well-being of the universe. No matter how difficult the worldly circumstances we encounter, we can also remember that the lasting joy of life is not found in acquisition or in achievement, but in relationship with others, human and non-human. And then you go on to say, this is a passage from a book written by a woman who was the first Navajo surgeon, Lori Arvizo Alvord, who writes in her autobiography, The Scalpel and the Silver Bear, the outside non-Indian world is tribeless, full of wandering, singular souls, seeking connection through societies, clubs, and other groups. White people know what it is to be a family, but to be a tribe is something of an altogether different sort. It provides a feeling of inclusion in something larger, of having a set place in the universe where one always belongs. It provides connectedness and a blueprint for how to live. So, Bill Pfeiffer, we're going to take a short break now. Will you stay on the line with us?
I'm all here.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. Thank you.
Yep.
And my guest today on Planetary Spirit is Bill Pfeiffer, who is the author of Wild Earth, Wild Soul, a manual for an ecstatic culture. And his website is www.billpfeiffer.org. That's BILLPFEIFFER.org. You are listening to Planetary Spirit, and more interviews like this can be heard at www.planetary-spirit.com. We're going to be taking a short break now. We'll be right back, so stay tuned.
Dream of a day when we can live without anger, and dream of a time when we can live without pain, and dream of a way that we can live without hunger, and dream of a sign that the earth can be peaceful again. What can we do to get our people looking higher? What do you do in the darkness but look for the light? We can join hands and do whatever we desire. We'll never fail as long as the reasons are right. We're gonna live in peace. It's our only chance on earth. We'll get all that fighting to cease. And remember what life is worth. Each of us has the power to bring about changes. Though society separates us from the time of our birth, well, we won't live here much longer if we live as strangers. And no time at all if we don't learn how to live with the earth. sharing a vision that we will have a new dawn. Remember that love is how it all got started. And don't you know that love will keep it going even after we're gone? What can we give the earth that we haven't given in the past? A way to live here on earth, make it last and last and last. Dream of a day when we can live in communion, and dream of a time when we can live without fear. Awaken a way to get all of us working together, and know that the time when the earth can be peaceful is near. Know that our thoughts and our actions are honest and clear. And know that the people on earth will be safe from all fear. Know that the time when the earth can be peaceful is near.
And welcome back to Planetary Spirit. This is Jeff Ferrannini, your host, and we're talking today with my guest, Bill Pfeiffer, who, among other things, is the author of Wild Earth, Wild Soul, a manual for an ecstatic culture. And his website is www.billpfeiffer.org. That's BILLPFEIFFER.org. And during the break, we were listening to a compilation CD entitled Spirit of Love, and the cut was by David Roth, entitled Earth. Hey, Bill Pfeiffer, welcome back.
Hi, Jeff.
So, let's see. You know, as I'm looking at the Wild Earth Intensive, which seems to be the centerpiece for what you're doing my sense is that you are kind of coming about things from Helen and Scott Nearing. They wrote a book called Living the Good Life, and they kind of went into a back to the land kind of movement after being city dwellers for a long time. And he said at one point in his writings that he felt inherently and intrinsically humankind had not really come to terms with a basic principle that was just deep in our bones, which is something along the lines of the right to have aggression and to be warring on others was the way society taught us to be. And what I'm hearing you saying is, what if we were to rethink on our most basic core level how we see ourselves in community, in in looking at life in another way, instead of an us versus them, meaning me and the guy next door to me, or me and that dog or that cat, or me and planet Earth, the mountains, the rivers, the streams. What if we were to see it like the indigenous people see it, and see that we're all in this together? And that, to me, seems to be the foundational perspective that Wild Earth, Wild Soul is asking us to move toward, and the Wild Earth intensives are helping us to come to a better opening towards looking at, maybe I can embrace a new way of being in the world.
Yes, exactly. The Wild Earth Intensive is a way to practice what we've been talking about, to experience what we've been talking about. So again, it's not an abstract concept that these almost lofty principles become very seen as almost self-evident. You also mentioned Scott Nearing, and the only thing that I felt a little bit differently about is, yes, it's back to the land in the sense of reclaiming our relationship to the land. But I've been thinking about how you could do a Wild Earth Intensive in the city, by setting things up in a certain way, because everything is energy, and that there is I grew up in New York City. There's a lot of power there, and there's a way in which it's less about actually where we do this Wild Earth Intensive and more about what we're doing together and how we're perceiving things. And that's what's so exciting. It's sort of deciding to spend our time differently with one another. And I love that you hadn't remembered that quote by that Navajo surgeon about the difference between family and tribe. And I think that's hitting the nail on the head, which is it's relearning and practicing tribe for a new time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I also want to just nibble a little bit more at the book in a couple of different places. Right in the beginning of the book, you say, nature is a profoundly important companion, mentor, and advisor because it is our ground of being. If you sit under a tree and observe its textures, listen to its surroundings, rub the fallen leaves on your palms, and be still, you will gain a sense of connection, gratitude, and awe. I can't explain how it works, but it does. And not just with trees, but almost anywhere out there when we make the intention to connect.
Exactly.
So I think that's what you're talking about.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
You had said, you quoted the book earlier around the deeper than thought, and I think that intention to experience the energetic matrix of life, of nature, is practicing that helps us know things and know life in a different way, because we love to think, and sometimes we think too much, and it's time to balance out all that thinking with we're using the word connecting. The fact is we're always connected. We just don't know it.
Yeah, yeah. I also want to get into really what this book, Wild Earth, Wild Soul, a manual for an ecstatic culture, really is. And, you say it right on the cover. It is a manual. This is really for anybody to come around and if they wanted to create a Wild Earth intensive, this really would be a manual to lead them through it, because really what you're doing is you're taking us through each day of the 10-day intensive and how it's laid out, how it's presented. You're giving us times for certain experiences to take place. You're telling us how the leaders would be approaching this. And there's also interesting things that you're paying attention to. Listening, feeling and hearing.
Feeling.
Nature immersion and connection. The power of story. Ceremony. Altered states of consciousness. Not using drugs of any sort, not even natural drugs, but just working with how to alter consciousness. Play, stillness, and then elders and mentors, art and music, vision and manifestation. I mean, this is a rich smorgasbord that you're inviting us to take part in. How does play work into that?
Well, before I go into that, I really liked that you named a bunch of the chapters, and the reason that I like that is that the Wild Earth Intensive is a way to practice earth-honoring culture, of which those titles that you read are the main cultural ingredients for lasting, healthy, thriving culture. And that's what's so exciting about it. It's like, I didn't make this stuff up. This is not some, build great idea kind of thing. This is just looking at how we have been successful in the past. And that's what's so, kind of wonderful about it. It's, we're not trying to stick something on, that it hasn't been there before. We're just trying to do what we've always done. We just forgot for a while, and that's what I get so excited about, is this kind of when we peel away some of that, what did you call it before, that aggression and that sense of entitlement and we're superior. When we peel that away, then we get this rich brew of living.
But really, what I'm hearing you saying, and tell me if I hope I'm interpreting you correctly, is this is an invitation to people that think that the whole game is all about getting the bigger car, the bigger house, the beautiful significant other, the 2.3 kids, either that place in the private school or that Ivy League college, and then the career that leads to, and then stepping back from that and starting to see the people that have all those outer trappings, and at base, at core, they're really not feeling the experience of happiness. There's something missing, and they can't name it. And what I'm hearing you say is that in order for us to really feel fulfilled as a culture, instead of this outer stuff, we're going to have to start doing the real work and look at the inner stuff as to how we can all thrive together in community.
Yep. Couldn't say it better myself, Jeff. And I just want to say publicly, I really, really appreciate the homework you've done for this interview. like when in terms of your questions and quotes and so forth, you've really studied the material, and I just feel really grateful about that. So thank you.
Well, thank you. But, I also have to say to you, this is really a beautiful book. And it's not something that you're just going to sit down and read. It's something you're going to have many aha moments and perhaps even some tears, because it is evoking a call to something deep that has been forgotten. And I really want to read, again, this is a part from the chapter, Nature, Immersion, and Connection, which I think gets at the base of what I'm talking about, where you say, getting to know a place goes beyond the collection of data and becomes a sacred communion with living beings and energies. This is when the mythic, animistic character of the land can reveal itself. The utter mystery and intelligence found in every part of the natural world. But then you go on to say and talk about the Aboriginal people. You say the labyrinth of invisible pathways which meanders all over Australia. These numinous landmarks are invisible to the eyes only. The Aborigines bring them into the realm of the heart through storytelling, dancing, singing, and painting. The song lines also provide them with subtle tracking mechanisms vital for navigation and survival. Like so many Aboriginal peoples the world over, they believe the land was created through sound and vibration as they themselves were. Sound and vibration come from the ancients who gave the people life. When the ancients walked over the land, those ancestral beings looked around and sang rocks, animals, plants, and streams into existence. Wherever they walked, Chatwin writes, they left a trail of music. The Aborigines still hear these songs, which are stored in the countryside. This is the heart of their culture, a sacred symbiosis of land, people, song, dreaming, and art.
Yeah. Who wrote that?
I think this guy, Bill Pfeiffer, and also this other guy, Bill Chatwin.
Yeah, Bruce Chatwin, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful that you grabbed that, because I felt very inspired when I put that together. And yeah. You mentioned the tear to the eyes, and there have been about 3 or 4 times during this interview where you'll read a portion of the book and I'll tear up.
I'm so glad of that.
I'm thinking, like, what's going on here? Does that sound like, whatever, self-important or something? And it really, truly is like, I felt like it was a lot of hard work, but I did feel like kind of the messenger of something else that wanted to kind of come through me.
Yeah, I've heard that from other people as well, that when I read their words, it may be the first time they've heard their words read, and it really touches them deeply. And it feels to me like, this work that you're doing, I can't imagine people going through 10 days with you on the land, seeing in new ways, being in community in new ways. People who are perhaps in 9-to-5 worlds, who don't even make eye contact for more than 2 seconds with anybody on the train, who, when they get out of their car, just walk directly to their house, open the door, and close it behind them. And here you are inviting us to really take part in immersing ourselves not just in nature, but in all of our five senses, and perhaps expanding ourselves beyond our five senses to really start to embrace the animalistic human that we have always been, but sort of have kept in our heads away from embracing. So I could just see the amount of celebration in ceremony, the amount of play that you're offering, the having men and women, lawyers, doctors, being asked to draw out what that vision was must open their 5-year-olds in ways that are just unbelievable.
Yeah, I like that you said that they're inner 5-year-olds. It's like, somehow as adults we've started to take things way too seriously, and it's just so much fun to kind of let go and be really playful in a non-competitive way, and just reinvite that kind of almost silliness of just, it's just fun to fool around and not take things so seriously. And that's definitely a dimension in a Wild Earth Intensive, to just, kick back and just laugh and enjoy for the sake of laughter and enjoyment.
So let me ask you, Bill, you've been doing this for a number of years. You've been leading these, and now you're teaching others how to bring others through this experience of this 10-day Wild Earth Intensive. What has been your biggest joy in doing this?
Well, I'm very, I love working with every age group, but the 20-somethings really move me. I think it's because they're just starting out in their adult life, and there's tremendous pressure on them to kind of walk the straight and narrow. And the greatest joy has been essentially having them affirm that their idealism and their sense of, there's just got to be more to this than that plan you laid out for us with the car and the house and the career and so forth. That there's something deeper going on here, and they're not gonna settle. They might, in fact, choose to take place in the materialistic culture, but they're not going to get sucked into it so completely that they forget that there's, as you said earlier, that there's something deeper going on that actually fulfills us and gives us a deeper happiness.
And we are getting towards the end, but I want to read this passage, which is under art and music. And you say, writer, musician, and artist Martin Prechtel, who was initiated by the Dzutsul Maya in the 1970s, has this to say: all human beings come from the other world, but we forget it a few months after we're born. This amnesia occurs because we are dazzled by the beauty and physicality of this world. We spend the rest of our lives putting back together our memories of the other world, enough to serve the greater good and to teach the new amnesiacs, the children, how to remember. Often this lesson is taught during the initiation into adulthood. He then goes on to explain, if this world were a tree, then the other world would be the roots, the part of the plant we can't see, but that puts the sap into the tree's veins. The other world feeds this tangible world, the world that can feel pain, that can eat and drink, that can fail, the world that goes around in cycles, the world where we die. The other world is what makes this world work. And the way we help the other world continue is by feeding it with our beauty.
Yep.
So I just have to say thank you for the full bellies that you are constantly turning out and the new hearts you are opening through the Wild Earth Intensive. And for people who want to learn more about how to do this where they live, there's a manual out there called Wild Earth, Wild Soul, which is a manual for an ecstatic culture, written by my guest today, Bill Pfeiffer. Thanks so much for being my guest today and for doing the work you're doing.
You're very welcome, Jeff. As I said in the beginning, it's my pleasure.
Yeah. Well, thanks again. And my guest today on Planetary Spirit has been Bill Pfeiffer, the author of Wild Earth, Wild Soul, a manual for ecstatic culture. And his website is www.billpfeiffer.org. That's BILLPFEIFFER. And coming up, my guest will be Esther Nicholson, who is the author of Soul Recovery, 12 Keys to Healing Addiction. She's also the former backup singer for Rod Stewart. And if you're enjoying this program and would like to access past interviews, go to www.planetary-spirit.com. That's planetary-spirit.com for on-demand archives of past shows where recent interviews are now available. And while you're on the website, be sure to sign up for the email list to receive monthly updates for who my upcoming guests will be and the quarterly newsletter. And while on the website, be sure to like us on the Planetary Spirit fan page. And so this is Jeff Ferrannini of Planetary Spirit, wishing you all a blessed day.